There he is. There he is.
That was a little louder than I thought.
There he is.
That's okay.
Mine's pretty good. Yours is good.
I'm good.
Check.
Wait. Hey, give me the you know what.
Or should we let Lake
say that?
Should we?
Nah, you got it. Give me some emphasis.
And we're live.
There it is. Good
Oh,
one.
yeah.
Good one. Now turn the. I want more music.
That's way too loud. Ladies and gentlemen,
Welcome back. If you guys can tell, there's not just 3 of us. There's 4 of us here tonight.
oh yeah,
Again.
He just waved. This is our friend Lake Slabach. There's a bunch of things I could say about Lake Slabach. But no, we grew up together. You grew up in Davie.
Yep.
We played sports together. He was 1 grade above y'all.
same age but 1 grade.
Right.
Yeah.
He's
So
just
we were all,
academically inclined. You just you're ahead, man.
we actually grew up
I think mom
Really-
wanted me out of the house.
really close.
Demographically.
We grew up really close to each other, like on a map. Yeah.
Right,
like
right.
a mile away from each other. So we knew each other growing up. Lake's, explain your job title right now.
I'm a Family Ministries pastor.
Okay, yeah, we're gonna get into more of that. But we are so excited to have him, dude. I want to start it off by saying, bro, I remember this is a story, dude. You were such a role model for us when we were growing up, for me at least. And I'm so thankful to be able to reconnect with you and just talk through your life, man.
Yeah.
Happy you're here.
Thanks.
Definitely wish I could shoot 3-pointers like you.
That's one of my stories.
Was it Sunday afternoons? I think we were like, what grade? We would go play at Pine Brook.
Yeah,
bro. I remember.
And
like,
you were
that was like
tall.
elementary school.
That was
You were
fun.
taller than everybody else. I remember that.
Yeah.
Taller
It was
than
definitely
us.
pre-middle school.
Yeah, it was, and the what was the floor made out of? That like
Oh, if you
on
fell,
that,
game
oh,
over.
We got the imprints for
Yeah,
weeks.
yeah.
It was like that
Jeez.
sharp tile.
That was back in the day when Kirk's dad, Chester, we had to run around the court with our hands up.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yep.
Hey, hands up, hands up. My shoulders were burning,
That
bro.
was torture, man.
Yeah, so we're excited. First off, Laker, what are you doing right now?
Yes.
Not right now, but like in your life right now.
Yeah,
You know
yeah.
what I'm saying?
So we live in Detroit,
Yeah.
and I work as a family ministry pastor. So
Okay.
basically oversee ministries for birth through high school.
Okay.
And then I work specifically with parents. So
Okay.
trying to resource and equip parents and do life with parents.
When did you start that?
A little over 2 years ago.
Okay, yeah. So you grew up in Davie.
Yep.
You went to High Point.
Yep.
Did you go to High Point for ministry?
No.
Okay. I didn't know if you could even do that. So how
Yeah.
did that work?
Yeah, so I was at High Point University and was studying to teach high school history.
Yeah.
And then probably like the least climactic. Ooh,
That's a good word.
wow. I can say anticlimactic, but I can't say least climactic. Call to ministry, like the church I grew up at called and were like, hey, we need an interim youth leader.
Yeah.
And
You literally got a call.
yeah.
You
Yeah,
were
I guess that's true.
Literally called
Yeah,
to
yeah.
ministry.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And so I was like, okay, yeah, like while they were looking for the person that's going to be, I'll do that. So I was doing that during my senior year
Yeah.
in college. And then a couple of months in, they were like, well, we'll just wait. And when you graduate, you can come on full time if you want that. So I was like, sweet, I was going to work with high school kids anyways.
Yeah.
And now I don't have to like worry about getting them ready for tests.
Yeah.
So like not a good call to ministry.
Did you end up? Okay. Well, I want to start back because a couple of things I do definitely want to talk about is
I think people need to know how close we were, like growing
Yeah.
up. Like
Yep.
we lived really, really close. We spent a ton of time together
Yep.
at church, in the summer with
Summers,
sports and school. So like Lake is a really close friend for all 3 of us. And it was funny, like on the way over here talking about how, man, I haven't seen you in 10 years.
I know,
And literally
yeah.
in the truck, it's literally like last week we just played church basketball together.
Yep.
And now it's just like, my man Lake's here. Like, this is so awesome. And it's like, it's crazy thinking about how much in life we've missed.
Right.
And like, I'm having to explain to you,
Yep.
this is my son. This is his name. It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
man, my boy Lake, like, he's supposed to know this stuff. You
Yeah,
know?
yeah.
So like, I'm so happy you're here, man. Like
Yeah,
when
yeah.
we talked on the phone, was it like 2 months ago, I think?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. And we talked, look, just, now that I'm in ministry, just talking to Lake
Yeah.
about
Yeah,
how
yeah.
things are going for him and just advice. I think it's really good to talk to people you
Yeah, for
trust
sure.
and you have a relationship with.
Yep.
And I was like, come on the podcast, man.
Yeah, right.
So
Yeah.
I'm glad this all
It's-
worked out, man.
Yep.
it's like it's almost like you wish that you'd been in more contact, but you know how close you guys were and still are because it's like you never left.
Yeah.
Which is
Yep.
so awesome, man. Like it's so awesome to have friends like that.
Yeah.
So where do we want to start? I want to start about when did you get saved, bro? I want to just hear your testimony. I
Yeah.
want to hear like,
I don't think I've ever heard your testimony.
Yeah.
I know we grew up in church together,
Right.
so I want to just hear.
Yeah. So like I think as an adult I've gone back and forth on that at times, but
Yeah.
where I've settled, and I've also settled that in eternity it's not going to matter if I know
Right.
the exact date. But
Right.
I think I was saved as a child. So when I was elementary school age, came to faith with my grandpa, and then got baptized when I was in high school. And I would say that there was a heavy emphasis on like works, on like how you behave when you're a Christian, and not a lot of emphasis. I mean, people would tell me like read the Bible, pray, stuff like that, but nobody was like sitting me down and being like, hey, let's read the Bible together,
Right. Yeah.
and here's how you do it, and like I guess teaching me like Bible drill, really.
Yeah,
that's,
right.
Yeah.
that's like the Bible literacy that I got was I could at least find the books.
Bro,
and, like,
those are some fun times, man.
Those were some fun times.
Yeah. So then like I don't know how much detail you want me to go into right now.
As much as you want. I just
Bro, I love Bible drill.
Yeah,
like
dude.
we
Yeah.
got so competitive. Like
explain what Bible
so we
drill
did
was
Bible
real quick.
drill. It was like a church program we did where it was like memorizing passages, finding key verses, and basically it was not intended to be a competition, but there was a scoring
Right.
system
I
when we
mean,
got into
if-
like later
if-
years.
Yeah, if they're
And
scoring,
you
it's a
could-
competition.
That was
bro.
it.
Like,
The bonus points. We got
you
to
could
high.
game the system.
Was that high
Yeah,
school?
100%.
I think it was high school.
It was
so
high school was bonus points.
the
Yeah.
first person to actually find the scripture or the passage and step
We're all
forward
standing
got
on
a bonus
stage in
point.
a row.
Yeah.
And if you find it, you have
The
to
first
step
person
forward.
got the bonus point. So
But if they called on you and you weren't actually,
if you were wrong, yeah.
but you're like, they're not going to call me every time.
Yeah.
So if I get one minus,
Game
I get bonus
system.
points all the
Yeah.
other times. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't even ever think about that.
Nah,
Dude,
but
dude,
I
I,
just
didn't
remember-
know where those verses were.
Dude, that was so fun, man. But seriously though, like
this
I think
will average out.
talking about like Bible literacy and studying God's word, like
Yeah.
man, I'm thankful we did Bible drill. Like
Yeah.
that was
Yeah,
really
yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Because we had a lot of people that did it too. You know,
Solid
like we had like
foundation.
10 or 12.
Yeah, and it laid a good foundation. I think that looking back, it's easy to say like, I wish other people would have done this for me.
Yeah.
And then it's like I'm not really actually taking responsibility. Like the ultimate responsibility is on me for
Right.
not being in the Word myself and not saying I need
100%.
to know this and I need to take it to heart. But so I grew up being a believer.
Yeah.
Would pray, would try and share the gospel with friends. But then when I was in high school, mom got sick.
Yeah. And
Struck-
you can
Yeah.
talk more about that or as much as you want.
Yeah.
Man. I want to hear that. I want to hear those. I know most of the story, but
Right.
I want to hear it just from your eyes, man. Because I
Yeah.
think that changed your life, but I
Yeah.
think that changed your life as a Christian too. So
Yeah, for sure. So like I think I was really on the fast track to just run of the mill,
yeah.
like average life,
Yeah.
like nothing crazy. And then mom got sick when I was 16.
Yeah.
And so I think that, it was shocking, but it was also like, you never let yourself think like this is going to kill her.
Right.
Or like she's going to die because of this. It was just like, oh, she's sick and it'll work out. Coach Biter, like our track and cross country coach, died a year after mom got diagnosed. So that was
Right.
another like kind of shot across the bow. And then when I was a sophomore, she just got sicker and sicker and passed away. And I think that we were talking about this when we were eating, but what that really for me shined a light on was that I was operating off works-based righteousness.
Yeah. Right.
So I believed that if I did X, Y, and Z, the good things, and I avoided A, B, and C, the bad things, then I would get good and not have anything bad happen.
Yeah.
And so when mom died, it was kind of like, okay, well, if I'm going to like avoid all this and still my mom's going to die.
Right. Still feel like it's a punishment almost.
Right. Then I'm going to do the stuff that I've been wanting to do anyways,
Right,
which like really
right.
is revealing my heart.
Flesh.
Like I was actually still desiring to do the things that it wasn't supposed to do. So then really after that was just like, I really gave myself over to all the desires of my heart.
Right.
For a couple of years.
And that was when you were like late high school. Early
that was
college,
like,
right?
that was like college.
Yeah.
And then the ramifications of giving myself over to those things, like that's, I think, a lot of what you don't think about when you're in that. You're like, I'm going to just do this stuff. And even if it's just for a season, I'll come back out of it.
Yeah.
But
100%.
sin, like it gets a hold of you.
Yeah.
And it's so hard to lay those things down, or like little offshoots of those things. Yeah. And so then the time that I spent really like dissecting and trying to put sin to death because of that season, that went into like I would say like almost my mid-20s probably.
Yeah.
Right.
Where I'm like trying to put things to death, doing what I don't want to do, not doing the things I do want to do.
Like Paul says.
Yeah. And so that was the season where I was like, okay, am I coming to faith now?
Right.
Or is God just like pruning me and like illuminating that I've been in the season of rebellion and I need to grow out of this?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. There's a verse, and I think it's at the end of James, where it talks about like somebody who goes back and wins a brother. And that's really like my now brother-in-law, Joe.
Yeah.
Like he had somebody, at first me and him are like kind of going through this rebellious phase together, partying stuff. And then he had somebody at school that was just like hard after him,
right.
like confronting him in sin, calling him out, dragging him to church. And so then Joe was kind of like receiving this discipleship.
Yeah, right.
And then he was talking to me about it. And it really got to a point where I was like, dude, I just want to drink. I just want to whatever. Like, let's not talk about this.
Right.
But then Joe was just persistent. And even like, he'd invite me to hang out. And it's like, I don't really want to. But then I would be. Which again goes back to like God's sovereignty. And,
right.
Yeah, man. Thank goodness for that.
Yeah.
His persistence. Thank you for Joe's persistence.
Right. And so even like when I got called to be the youth leader at Hillsdale, like Joe years later showed me like he had a prayer journal he found where he had written in it like, wow, Hillsdale just hired Lake, and like Lake is not a candidate to be a youth leader right now. Oh God. And so he was like praying about this. And cool. I was like hyped about it. I was like, this is gonna be great. And I'm totally ready for this. And Joe was like, dude, this man is not going into ministry for the right reasons. So but he was just persistent and won me back over time. And like even in those early years at Hillsdale, I was following the Lord, but my life was still messed up. I was still like, there was a lot of areas in my life where sin had a really strong hold on me.
Yeah, right.
And and like ways that I was not representing the Lord well.
I want you to talk, and y'all ask questions.
Oh yeah, go ahead, man.
I want you to talk a little bit more about your point about like doing good things to receive good things, as opposed to just doing what the Lord says.
A lot of people have those same thoughts,
Yeah, because I have those thoughts. I'm like, is my heart in the right place?
Yeah. Right.
Am I doing this because I love Jesus, or am I doing this because I know the Bible tells me so? Like,
I'm trying to do good so I can get good.
Right.
Do good to receive good.
When did that kind of flip for you?
I think that the realization that I'm operating on a false premise was when my mom died. Like, because if I have believed my whole life, subconsciously or consciously, that if I do the right things, God's going to give me what I want or what I deserve, or any of that. If I'm believing that and then my mom dies, then you have to confront like, okay, so this is not true because my mom just died. So now I need to rework what I've been thinking and believing. And so for me, initially, it was easier to just not believe anything and to just put it off to the side. But then as I came back, I think realizing that like God doesn't owe me anything was big. And that I can never pay him back. And so that was huge. But then like, I think something I was not introduced to until I had been working at Hillsdale for a couple of years was the idea of like the sovereignty of God. It's not something that was talked about a lot growing up.
Explain what that is.
Yeah, so like the fact that God is in control of all things, and that he works all things together for the good of those who love him and are called according to his purposes. Not that they'll go the way that person wants them to go,
but it's all for his good.
Yes. And like even Joseph in Egypt, like his Jacob dies and his brothers are like, oh, now he's going to really like give it to us. And he's like, no, like you made it for evil, but God intended it for good. Not just that he turned it for good, but like he's been sovereign over this. So if God's sovereign and he only gives good gifts, like he doesn't hand us a snake instead of a fish or a rock instead of bread, then like the opposite's true. Like if we're asking for a snake, he's not going to hand it to us. Or if we're asking for a rock, he's not going to hand it to us. And I think that was big in shifting the way that I viewed like what I do for God. And if that's me paying him back or trying to buy him off.
I think it's really like an overemphasis on ourself.
Yeah.
I think really underlying that is almost a sense of pride and thinking that like somehow like I'm controlling things, or not that the way we live doesn't matter. That's not all what we're saying.
Yeah,
the way you live does matter, but
reflection of
ultimately
responsible.
God is in control. And like, just because I do good things doesn't mean I'm telling you, in college, I honestly would sit there and think, all right, if I lived good this week, I'm going to play better in this weekend series.
Right.
Dog,
If
I still have those thoughts,
dude, for real. But like, it's so backwards, man.
100%.
The way I perform or the way you perform in baseball has got nothing to do with your walk with Christ.
I would say I do it a lot less now because just like you said, man, it has the way you perform. But dude, I want you to talk a little bit more, just like and I can talk, and both of you guys can talk just about.
I want to hear
the impact about Miss Angie having on your life, your friends' lives, everybody's lives around her, man. I want you to just talk more about her, if you don't mind, man.
Yeah, I don't know.
I just love talking about her, man.
Yeah, I love talking about her too. Mom was the best.
Yeah.
Like, there is a thing where, like, when somebody passes away, that you remember the good stuff and the bad stuff. So it's like easy for her to be kind of
Yeah, but bro, there's some
dubbed a saint.
I could not say a bad thing about her. Ever.
Yeah.
I don't know anything bad about her. Seriously.
Right. Yeah, she was great. I mean, a great mom.
Yeah.
I think that in some ways, like in a lot of ways, Allie and myself, and even me a little more than Allie, because I was the only one of us that was out of the house that was at college.
Right.
I did get to taste that, like, parent as a friend, where the other three didn't really get that.
Because you're older.
They're still under the household. Yeah. Different dynamic.
Like, I had started to see a shift in relationship with my dad and my mom of like, okay, they're still my parent, but there's also like this friendship that now we're working with. And so that was really neat. Like, even though that only lasted a short time.
Right.
And so I'm thankful for that. But
man, I'll just say on my end, dude, I just remember her being so encouraging. I remember her being encouraging, and I remember her giving the best advice.
Yeah.
Like practical, godly, wise advice.
Yep.
That's what I remember about her. Like, at a time when I was young, I mean, we were coming over there when we were in middle school.
Yeah.
I think we met you in like probably middle school age, right? Maybe younger, but
a little young. Yeah.
I think we knew who you were more so in like elementary school because of basketball.
But then we started really hanging out in middle school. Yeah.
We used to ride our bike.
Oh,
we tell the story, bro. Kirk, you want to tell the story?
No, I ain't telling this story.
We used to ride our bikes over because they had a pool.
I'll kill it.
Y'all still have a pool.
Yeah, we still have a pool. Yeah.
Yeah, we used to ride our bikes over there, and we take our towels, we take everything in a book bag. I would put mine in the book bag. So Kirk was over one time. We had 3 bikes, and we it's literally a mile and a half away. And so Jacob didn't want to take a book bag, I don't think. So he had to
threw that towel on my
No. You sat on the towel.
Wait, it was like
I think
you was on my chair
on it. I guess you wanted
my seat.
I guess you wanted your butt to be more comfortable or something. So
Nice cushion.
he's sitting on the towel, and me and Kirk he's probably trying to show how fast he can go. And,
I stood up, and I remember I went to take off because we were on the main road.
So there was a brief time where
you released the pressure that was on it from you sitting
and
on it.
I'm full throttle, man.
You came off our road, like our back road where our house is, and you had to go on the main road for probably
a tenth, maybe 2/10.
Very short.
Yeah.
And so we get off our road, and Jacob was like, I'm going to book it. So he takes off, and his towel that he was sitting on falls down, gets in the spoke of the tire. He flips forward.
Yeah.
And me and Kirk, you remember it?
Yeah.
that was
Yeah.
We were behind him, and he flips forward and busts his hands up.
Horrific.
I had shrapnel in my palms.
Busts his hands up, like all messed up. The bike is broken.
Yeah.
We all stop for him. He's like freaking out. He hops on my bike. He's like, hey, just bring that bike. So he keeps going, and I'm left with a bike with 2 broken pedals that won't even go anywhere. So I had to carry the bike. But about Miss Angie, another thing about her was her sense of like taking care of others.
Yeah.
Because I remember when you got there, well, we weren't even inside. We went and played basketball.
Yeah.
But you were like about to die.
Look, I don't handle my own blood well.
It was really bloody.
It was
It was nasty.
And Miss Angie like sat in there. I remember that specifically. Like she took care of you, bro.
too.
Yeah.
White as a sheet of paper.
Yeah.
I'll never forget it.
Well, I was
love
telling
how-
Jacob, y'all took care of me after my
After the wisdom teeth.
When
Bro.
y'all had to help my
remember
dad carry me in when we
Oh,
got back
I remember
from
that.
the
I remember
dentist.
that.
Yeah.
My man was on a different planet. Like Tommy gave him way too much of the laughing gas. He did not come
He was
up
like,
short.
I can numb you or I can put you out. I was like, I've never been put out before.
Hey, when we were in high school, so all right, Lake was 2 grades above me, 1 grade above Jacob and
Right.
Kirk. So I think he was in 11th grade, I was in 9th grade, and we would have church league basketball after our services.
Yeah.
And so I remember this specifically, bro. Lake's a big LeBron fan, and so I guess
that's an understatement.
Yeah. I guess he had been looking up what LeBron used to hydrate before games.
Oh boy.
And so we stopped by the gas station, and Lake gets like 3 Gatorades,
Probably the commercial.
2 waters, like a bunch of these. And we get back to my house, at my parents' house, and he has it all by the sink. He's like, "We got to drink all this before the game." There's literally like 8 drinks, bro. I'm like, "You're a freaking nut, bro."
Yeah.
And then he'd go score like 30 points when we win the game.
I don't know.
Hey, we did win 1 year.
You were really good at basketball. Seriously.
Yeah.
I was good at church league basketball.
No, dude, you were good at basketball.
Yeah, I didn't play my senior year.
Your junior. What year did
Yeah.
you have like a really good year?
I was good on JV my sophomore year.
I think you were good your junior year too. Maybe I just looked up to
Yeah.
you, so I thought you were good at everything.
Yeah, I my junior year, we were on our way to play Alexander Central. And I had just had a good game the game before, and it was like, okay, I'm going to get in the rotation, and I'm getting some momentum here, finding my footing on varsity. And we're like almost to Alexander Central, which is like hour and a half from Davie. And I realized I grabbed the wrong bag. So I have like my school stuff. I did have my shoes, but no jersey.
I got my math book though.
Yeah. And so I remember I went and told Johnny Miller, because Johnny was one of the assistants, and he and my dad are friends. And I was like, I'm not telling Coach Absher.
Yeah.
And so I went and told Johnny, I was like, I don't have my jersey. and he looked at me and he was like, I can't use the language he used, but he was like, you got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh, this is bad. And so I got to wear the blood jersey, but I didn't play because they were like, if somebody else starts bleeding, we need that jersey. So I not only was I not going to play, but if it came down to it, I was going to have to strip
give up
in
your
front of
jersey.
everybody. Yeah.
I never knew that.
Yeah. And so then
brutal.
I felt like that was kind of like, all right.
Momentum over.
Yeah, no better way to kill momentum than to be like, I'm going to have to play naked.
Left my jersey. Oh, geez.
What?
I loved how competitive your mom was.
I was
like,
about to say, because your mom was.
I remember we would go on like family vacations, and your mom always drove y'all's van.
Right.
Our dad drove our van.
Yeah.
Yep.
And like, there would low key be like a race to wherever we were going.
She
Like,
was fast in the car anyways. And she would get out of tickets. Like, she would get pulled over.
Didn't she
and my
get
dad.
sick?
Yeah, she was motion sick, so she always drove.
So she always drove. Yeah, I remember.
And my dad
That's
would always
why.
be like, "You're going too fast," and she'd be like, "I haven't gotten any tickets." And then she'd get pulled over. And I know now as an adult, I know my dad was probably thinking like, "Here we go." Yeah, like,
finally,
yeah.
here comes the medicine.
And then like one time we got pulled over at the beach, and the guy like looks in the car and he's like, "Do you know how fast you're going?" And she was like, "Oh, probably too fast." And he was like, "Were you in a hurry?" She's like, "No, honestly, I wasn't." And he's like, "Where are you going?" And he's like, "You got some kids back there?" She's like, "Yeah, we're going to see the aquarium." And then like 5 minutes later, he's like, "You're such a good mom. Like, keep doing what you're doing." And he goes back to his car and leaves.
Your
and
dad's probably
my dad's
ticked.
like, "What?" And, yeah.
You're such a good mom.
I also remember Dad and her used to play Words with Friends.
Yeah.
And they would be playing
God.
Words with Friends for a month, one
Right.
game.
Yeah.
Because it would
that
take
game.
Dad 5 hours to do one move.
Bro.
Yeah.
Got to play something.
And I remember this because Dad, and I will also say, like, just a tribute to your mom, dude. Like, my parents also, whenever she passed away, like, I remember specifically my parents like grieving from that.
Yeah.
Because I think that, I mean, my mom and your mom would walk together like they were
Right.
extremely close, and even my dad and your mom.
Yeah.
But yeah, the last game they played before she passed away, she won.
Yeah.
And so Dad, I remember Dad saying, like, probably it was a while after
Right.
he was like, "Man, I ain't never gonna be able to beat her again because
Yeah.
she beat me the last one."
Yeah.
Nah, man.
Yeah, I would say that when I think of my mom, I think of a connector, like
Yeah.
that she was able to connect with people and connect people to each other.
Yeah.
And that's like I guess it's, I don't know if it's emotional intelligence or what, but just like being able to walk into a room
Yep.
and see people and
I have zero emotional intelligence. That is
You
not
know
my
what?
forte.
What? you're right.
I know.
But you have a lot of attributes that are extremely good. But yeah, you got none of that.
If somebody's mad at me, you better tell me because I ain't gonna pick it up.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, like I had like 2 or 3 conversations with her, but I was telling you earlier too, like I just looked up to her. Like had so much respect for her, and like I felt like I didn't even know her, but like when she did pass away, I was just like probably the same, not near to the degree that you did, but I was just like, why? You know, like someone who's like that, who's literally, I mean, in my eyes, again, like I put her up on a pedestal, basically. Like every time I was around her, I was like, man, she's so cool. Like, you know? And so I don't know. It's just difficult, and I hate that it happened, you know, but I'm sure, like you said, it's a huge part of your story looking back now. So I don't know. It's cool how God uses those situations where you're like, man, in the moment, we talked about maybe this with Kate, in the moment it sucks. Right? With like energy and injuries. Not energy. That's a pretty good thing. But I mean, it can just be difficult when you're going through that situation. And I know Jeremy's been through a lot of that too.
But that's not anything. I want to also.
Oh yeah, not any.
No,
I haven't lost anybody.
Well,
like so, I don't know.
I want you to kind of talk about because I had a buddy that I played with this year whose dad passed away, like very abruptly, and he was just like this whole season in the middle of grieving. I want you to kind of talk about like what that looked like for you, for anybody that's like, kind of gone through that, going through that. Like how did you like? What was that like for you?
Yeah. So going back to the like works-based righteousness, like it was like, all right, I need to be there for Heath and Emma. Like Allie's going off to college. And stuff, but like Heath and Emma, I felt like a responsibility for. So it was a lot of like, all right, what can I do for them? But then on the flip side of that, I think it was like once I had helped with them, I felt like, okay, I've earned the right to do whatever I want. And so, I mean, it was... Yeah,
I've done what I need to do.
Yeah.
That's done. Yeah.
And when did that flip? Do you know what I'm
When did you
saying?
reach
like
that point?
Was that just like did you feel like that was just like almost you're doing for others, but you're not grieving yourself?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
so I think that in John chapter 10, it talks about like the ones that the Father gives me, I'll never let go out of my hand. I was trying to get out of His hand so hard. Yeah. Like I really can't say what the end of that would look like apart from God. Like, I don't know if there would have been an end. Yeah. Like it was hopeless and there was a lot of despair and a lot of coping with different things that I just kind of, when people weren't looking, I was by myself. And I mean, struggling. Yeah.
Right.
So I think that apart from God, like there is no escape from that.
Right.
I maybe would have learned over time to cope better, or maybe I would have ended up in like, maybe I would have ended up in therapy or something and found like some way to work through worldly grief. But like, I think that the darkness that was in my heart and in my soul at that point, there was no cure for. So it really worked itself out in a friend, who somebody else was pouring into,
right. And
coming after
being
me,
persistent.
Yeah.
We've talked about this in like the context of discipleship and just like the impact of you reaching someone and then reaching someone else. And this is a perfect example of that is how the Holy Spirit working through Joe in your life, you know, curing this darkness that worldly things just can't touch, you know, like no matter what you try to do to cope, however you try to rationalize it in your mind, you can't get through it or over it under your own means, you know?
Yeah, right.
It's just like encouraging again of how much we can help other people.
So what did that look like?
Joe may not have had any idea of exactly what you were going through either.
Right, you know? Right. I mean, he knew mom and like knew, but he knew that I was in a bad spot. He was not the only one either. Like, there was people that like anonymously, they weren't anonymous to my dad, but my dad wouldn't tell me who they were, but they would call and tell on me and be like, hey, you know, Lake is doing and saying and acting in ways that are not consistent with what we know about how he was raised and how we've known him growing up. And so like there was conversation with my dad where it's like, hey, are you doing X, Y, and Z? And at that point in my life, I was just like, yeah, I am. Yeah. And which like now as a dad, like I'm like,
that's hard.
Like, I put him in a tough spot because he's like, okay, so you're like,
because you're off of college 19, at this point, right?
You're 19 years old. Yeah, like what am I going to do with that? Wow. And I was just kind of like, yep, that's what I'm doing. Yeah. But like Joe was the person in my life that was not anonymous. That was like, that was confronting me in it. And I think now he knows because I've talked to him about it and we see each other all the time. But I don't think he probably knew in the moment just how important that was for where I was at. Like he didn't know how close to me just walking away from it I was. So
I want to mention your dad too.
Yeah.
We talked a lot about your mom, but like your dad's the man too.
Yeah.
GF Slab.
Yep. Yeah. And I think like a lot of parents probably freak out in that moment, and he didn't. He like offered, he was like, do you need help? Like, do you need to talk to somebody? I mean, the biggest thing was like drinking and like what that looked like. And he didn't know that I was doing that at all until people started telling him.
Yeah.
And so I think that he was like, how bad is it? What is that? Is it like, you're just going to parties, or is it
a problem
alone in your room? Yeah. Which it was like, honestly, at that point, both.
Yeah.
So, he offered to get help, and he didn't like he had an honest conversation with me, but he didn't freak out. And I think at that point it was kind of like, okay, so some of this that's been in the dark is starting to come out in the light, and I'm going to have to actually deal with it.
Yeah. What have you learned? Or that's kind of skipping ahead, but so okay, you get out of college. You're a youth pastor at Hillsdale.
Yeah.
How long were you there?
Yeah.
What was that time like?
Yeah. So I should say, like, when I took the job at Hillsdale, and I mentioned earlier, like, terrible reason to take that type of job, but then I had a fear of teaching something that was wrong. And I don't know if that was a godly fear right off the bat. Like, I think part of it was definitely I just didn't want to be wrong.
Yeah.
But that
didn't want to be questioned.
But again, God used that for good. And like that drove me to study because I was like, okay, I got to know if like I get asked a question, I don't want to.
Yeah. Have confidence in what you're saying. Yeah.
So I was like studying a lot, reading, praying. And that was where God was shining a lot of light in dark places in my soul. And then on top of that was like, okay, so this is what I'm doing is more than just a job, which is kind of how I took it right off the bat. And so because
you were in school to become a teacher, a history teacher.
Right.
So that's your frame of mind in college.
Yep. So I was like, this is still education, but it's like for the church, which is just, it's completely different. So,
but I'll also say, it's so awesome that like the Lord used you. Like you weren't equipped for it.
Right. Yeah. No.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, and I'm not saying that's the right way to do it.
Right.
It's like his disciples, man. He's equipping people that aren't equipped.
You see that more.
Yeah. Which is awesome that you're able to like, you're honest. Yep. That's why I loved it. I loved it about Cade, and I love it about you, man. You're real. You're honest. But yeah, so you're there. You're learning. You're praying,
and then start just discerning. Like, okay, this is something I feel called to.
Right.
And if I'm called to it, then like, I need to be killing sin and preparing myself for it. And I also need to be like equipped in my knowledge. Yeah, so like that was when I decided to leave Hillsdale and go to seminary.
Yeah. Where'd you go to seminary?
You started full time, right?
Yeah. Started out. So I moved to Durham and started going to Southeastern.
Yeah.
That's where I met Ellie, my wife.
Yeah. Talk about your family a little bit.
Yeah. So I've been married to Ellie for 5 years. Just celebrated 5 years in October. Cool. We've got a daughter, Davy, who will be 3 in January, named after Davie County.
I like that name.
Yep. And then a daughter, Mercer, named after Mercer County, Pennsylvania, where Ellie's family's from.
2 sweethearts. I got to meet them tonight.
Yeah, they're the best. And then we live in Detroit, so and we got one on the way.
Nice, bro.
Yeah.
Do you have a name for them yet? Actually, don't.
We're going back and forth. We with the girls, we didn't find out what gender they were until they were born. So we had like both. But this time around, I told Ellie, I was like, I need a little bit of a heads
I gotta know.
If it's gonna be 3 girls, I'm cool with it. But I just need like,
it's a boy.
Mental preparation.
We'll see. We'll see. Yeah.
So 3-year-olds, what's she doing now?
Oh, it's so much fun.
Yeah.
Like we a couple weeks ago, we got to go out on a daddy-daughter date. The church I work at has a school. And so they had like the school play. Yeah. And so I like took her to that, and we went, I was like, I'll take you out to dinner before and where you want to go. And she was like, you think we can get some cheese dip? I was like, yeah, we can get some cheese dip.
That's so cool.
Yeah. And so she's just like fun because you can do stuff together and she'll like remember things. Like Saturday we were at the house and she was like, are we going on a date tonight? And I was like, not tonight, but we'll go on another one. Yeah.
That's cool, so
bro.
Cool.
Yeah.
Slowly getting into that. KJ's like, walking, talking a little bit, small conversation. Yes, no, all that kind of stuff. But it just, time goes by so fast.
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy too. Like now with 2, their personalities are.
I was going to ask.
Oh,
like, how do you have 2?
They're coming
completely
out
different.
Yeah. Davy loves to read. And so she'll get a pile of books and she'll sit on the couch and it might be hours and you don't know like you're like, are you okay? Yep. Just reading. And it's like,
no, that's awesome.
yeah, like, so she kind of was like, we were like, oh, kids are great. Let's have a lot.
4, 5, 6, bring them on.
Yeah. And so then we had Mercer, and Mercer is Spitfire.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's crazy because I love them both, and they're just different. Like, Mercer is, I think I told some of y'all earlier, like, whatever emotion she's feeling it more than you have ever felt it.
Yeah.
Some passion.
It is
That's
immediate.
so crazy how they're so different, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
So you went to seminary at Southeastern.
Yep.
Was Ellie going to school? Where was she doing?
Ellie
at the
was
time?
working at Duke. She's a nurse. So
yeah.
We got connected through a small group, like a young pros small group. We were attending the Summit Church in Raleigh. And so just started dating and then got married and lived there. I worked at Summit for 3 years.
Yeah.
And that was part of the time while you're at Southeastern, or you finished school completely, or how did that transition work?
I was at Southeastern full time as a student, and was working on the grounds crew there. So doing leaves, mowing, whatever. Yeah. And that was a lot of fun, actually. That's one of my favorite jobs I've ever had. Like, great group of guys. We would like play basketball at lunchtime, and it was a lot of fun.
That's cool.
But then had been serving at Summit in Kidsmen. With I started with second grade boys, and then moved up to third grade and fourth
just a
grade.
member of the church serving in the children's ministry.
Yep.
Okay.
I when I first moved down, I started slow because I was like figuring out paying for it and stuff. And then when me and Ellie got married, she was like, let's knock seminary out. So because she was working as a nurse, the money I made from grounds crew was enough. But before that, I had actually been working, like selling cars at a car dealership.
Yeah.
So I was doing that. And then,
that's new. How did you do, Lake the car salesman?
Look, so
I'm in the market for a new truck.
Yeah, glad you weren't doing that the last 3 years.
Yeah,
didn't have to do anything.
I was. If somebody wanted to buy a car, I would sell it to them. But if you were unsure, I was like, yeah, you probably shouldn't.
You're not a very good salesman, son.
But I was also pretty normal.
Yeah.
So like my bosses liked me, and they would like be like, hey, I got a buddy coming in. If you like detail the car for him, I'll count it like you sold it. And I'm like, yes, sir. As right as due. I need to sell some cars. Yeah. So I think they liked having me around. And so they would all the time. I would get stuff like that where it's like, I thought you only sold 5 cars this month. Why does it say you sold 8? And I'd be like, well, I drove one over for somebody.
I detailed that one.
Yeah. I shook that guy's hand.
That's awesome.
So yeah, that was that was like part of what I was doing. And then I went to, I forget where we were. Oh, so
while you're Southeastern.
I was at Summit. Me and Ellie were engaged. And I was just serving in Kidsmen. So had a group of second grade boys, and then moved up to third and fourth grade with them, and would, be in there with them on Sunday mornings.
That's cool. So you moved up. You didn't stay at that class. You moved with the students you were working with.
Yeah, they would come to us every year and be like, do you want to stay or do you want to move? And I would just always opt to move up with my guys because with that age, it's so
that's
hard
really cool.
It's so hard to get to know them and for them to trust you. And so by the time they were in fourth grade, it felt like, okay, we can actually talk about some of this stuff because I know enough about you.
Right.
Like they would come
You know me, I know you.
Right. And they would like tell me about stuff that they were interested in, and I knew what to ask.
Yep. Conversations.
Because if you think about it, if you have a kid for a year or two, it almost takes that much time just to build up like the comfort and trust.
You're just getting to know them. Yeah.
Do you still talk to any of them now? Like how old would they
fourth
be now?
grade?
Geez, because
they would be in like high school, right?
Yeah, they'd be in high school. Yeah, I haven't talked to any of them in a while.
That's wild.
I went on staff at Summit after I'd been serving there for like a year and a half. They were planning a new campus, and they were like, hey, you've been serving in kids. We need a kids director for this new campus. And so that was when I came on staff, and then finished up seminary while I was doing that.
Yeah. Did you like your role as a kids director versus youth pastor? Like how was that like? Because that's two completely different things.
Yeah.
Still students, but different.
Yep. So I would say that like when I was at Hillsdale as a youth pastor, like, and at that point in my life, I was like 22. And a lot of those kids were, 16, 17, 18. Like, so they were not, there wasn't a bunch of different.
So
except that killer beard, man.
Yeah, that's right. And then I was losing all my hair. Yeah.
Quality.
Yeah. So it was more like, I was doing stuff with the kids. With the youth. And then at Summit, it was more me learning what I was trying to do. Like there was a big culture of like, why are we doing this? Like how do we view ministry, and like, do we have a mission and a vision for that? And that was something that I can look back at Hillsdale and see myself grasping for that.
Right.
But I think that was like a big part of what Summit taught me, was like having a direction and a goal, and then like ministering to parents, because like and this is getting more into the family ministry side of it, but like the church is not the place that is the primary discipleship tool for your kid.
Right.
So like if you drop your kid off at church and you're like, this is how they're going to know God.
Wrong mentality.
Yep.
Yeah, right.
And it's not going to work.
No.
At like a 90% fail rate or something.
1 hour a week, 1 hour twice a week. That's not it.
It's
gotta
nothing
be.
at home.
Right.
So
we are a partner, and we are equipping and resourcing the parent to do that in the home. And that was like a mentality shift that happened at Summit.
Let me ask you this, because you mentioned culture there for a second, and like my mom, as you know, this first year as youth pastor, and thinking about culture and like what the culture we want as a youth group and our church, like what and I don't even know, how much emphasis have you put into trying to build culture and to like change the way either the congregation views things or even the people you work with, like as children's director, and now your role, you have a lot of people that work with you, like what's some of the things you've learned about culture and, you know, the importance of culture? I'm just strictly curious myself.
Yeah, so this is something that they said at Summit that's so true, and that I wasn't aware of until I was there, was that by the time that you're tired of saying it, the people you're around have just heard it. And by the time they're sick of hearing it, the people one ring out from that are just hearing it for the first time.
Wow.
So like when I'm like my job right now, most of my interaction with people is with our staff.
Yeah.
So like the student staff team, the kids staff team. So like as I am working with them, the things and ideas that I'm trying to talk with them about.
Right.
Like when they're like, okay, here goes Lake again.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, so like
finally we're at that point.
Yep. And then like they're going to get to a point where they're sick of talking about like partnering with parents to reach kids for the gospel of Christ and raise them for his school. That's like our mission statement. So like when they're sick of that, parents are probably just hearing it for the first time. Another
really
thing
cool.
that they would say is like vision leaks. So if you're not constantly putting that in front of people, then they're going to forget it.
That's cool. I'm thinking about that with John at church, like at youth, like for those few weeks where you were like hammering in 1 John, like who Jesus is and who John says that he is.
Yeah.
I just thought about that. Some days I was like, dang, he's doing it again.
Yeah.
But like I think about that in that ring of those youth, like they're getting it. They're getting it, right? And then they may tell one person, right? Like they're out of ring, their family, somebody at home. I think that's a really cool way to kind of look at things.
That's it. This past weekend, so I've been filling in as that we've been looking for a high school pastor. I've been filling in teaching, and we've been going through the book of Genesis this fall, which has been so much fun.
Yeah.
We went through that with our kids one summer.
Yeah.
And there's just,
that was a long time
there's just
ago.
so much where it like repeats itself, right? Like that God continues to do the same things over and over. Yeah. And it's like, hey, have we ever seen God start a group of people before? And it's like, he did it in the garden. He did it with Noah. He did it with Abraham. Yeah. And so like these things repeat throughout the Bible. And so then this past weekend when we were in Mark, and we were talking about Jesus in the garden, and like the disciples fell asleep, and one of the students was like, "Is this kind of like when Adam fell asleep in the garden?"
Right. Yeah.
And I was like, "Okay, so like."
Wow.
I think there's some differences, but I am like, that was just like, all right, where it's like all semester I've been like, the Bible interprets the Bible, like, and then this one student was like, okay, so I've heard this story before. And I was like, that's cool.
And they're thinking back, right? And that's how you know that what you taught then is really resonating in their heart, because they're thinking about it in the context of something else.
Right.
That's so cool, man.
Nice. So in your role now, so you went from like where you were at Summit, right? How did you kind of get to where you are now?
Yeah.
I guess.
So we've been at Summit for like 2.5 years, and I was finishing seminary. And it was kind of like when I was at Summit, I had kind of backed into that position where like I was, like I said, I was serving.
You were in children's ministry.
And then kind of got tapped on the shoulder and was like, hey, are you interested in this? And so me and Ellie had never spent time like, are we called to Raleigh specifically, or are we called to this church and this people? And so as we were coming up on the end of seminary, it was kind of like, okay, we had just had Davey, so we're starting a family. Let's just spend some time praying about like what comes after seminary, and maybe the answer is that we stay,
right?
And maybe this is where we're supposed to be, or maybe this has just been a season and we're called somewhere else. And so during that time, there's a company called Shepherd Staff that reached out to me, and they were looking for Highland Park Baptist Church for this role. And so did some interviews with them, and then they connected me to the church.
Yeah.
So that was from
awesome.
Summit, which was like outside of Raleigh.
Yep.
To
Detroit.
Detroit.
Yeah.
Detroit.
Picked up and moved.
Yep.
That's
Yeah.
wild.
Picked
Were
up
you
and moved.
nervous? Like, what was it like? 'Cause that's a big move, man.
Yeah.
You don't have any family up in Michigan.
Yeah, no, none.
Ellie's got family in Pennsylvania, right?
Pennsylvania
Yeah.
and Iowa.
Yeah.
So she has some cousins on the west side of
Okay.
Michigan. But yeah, so for all intents and purposes, moving up there.
Yeah.
And for me, I've never lived outside of North Carolina.
Yeah.
So Michigan was just like a foreign concept.
Yeah, right, right.
It was like hypothetical until I visited.
Yeah.
But
Might be real.
How was that
Yeah.
first winter? What was that like?
oh man, magical.
Just absolutely freezing.
Would be good.
Now he
Did you
hates it.
actually? Did you like? Did you?
Yeah, every time it snowed, I was like sending
Little
Ellie
kid.
pictures. I'm like, it's snowing. And she's like, I'm here too.
It snows all the time.
Yeah, she's like, it hasn't been sunny. I'm like, I don't care.
Like, it's been snowing for 2 months. Stop it.
Yeah, when she grew up in Pittsburgh, so it's like,
Oh,
it's
she knew. Yeah,
and
okay.
she's like, it snows more because Pennsylvania gets like lake effect off Lake Erie, which Detroit doesn't get. So like a lot of times, Ellie's family in Pennsylvania gets more snow.
Right.
Yeah. But
Magical.
it was magical.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then last winter we didn't get like hardly any snow.
Really?
Yeah. Like I went out and bought a sled for. I'm all in it. I went out and bought a sled for Davey, and we got
It's
to use
still
it once.
magical.
Yeah.
Okay, what's the coolest place? Like,
I got this sweatshirt up north.
I was gonna ask you.
Yeah,
like,
got it
Is this
in
the company or is it?
No.
just like-
So we went this summer to Glen Arbor, Michigan, which
Yeah.
is insane.
Is that where-
Beautiful. It's like Leland, Glen Arbor. It's like northwest.
Oh, I'm
Michigan.
thinking about Ann Arbor.
Yeah.
Or Michigan.
Yeah. So
okay.
Ann Arbor's like 45 minutes.
That's
from
like
us.
UM, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's some of the coolest places you visited? Like, because I mean, you got the Great Lakes, the Upper Peninsula.
Yeah.
You getting because Michigan, you have borders Canada. So like,
Right.
what's some of the cool places you've been?
Yeah. So Detroit, only city in the U.S. where you drive south into Canada.
What?
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
So
because
on a
Canada
map,
goes.
it scoops
Canada
under.
like scoops.
Right.
Going
right,
down to
Michigan
Canada.
is like
Yeah.
on that.
When you cross the bridge, you're going
That's cool.
south.
That's
yeah.
wild.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. That northwest corner of Michigan,
Mm-hmm.
like Glen Arbor, Leland, it's Lake Michigan looks like the ocean, but it's
Yeah.
crystal clear.
Yeah.
And like the further north you go, so like up there, it's crystal clear. But then there's like Leland in particular. They've got this like old fish town is what they call it, and it's
Right.
right on the water. It's these little shacks.
Yeah.
They've got like sandwich shops and stuff, and it's just like very
cool.
picturesque.
Yeah.
But
That's really cool, man.
That's sweet. But all of Western Michigan is great. Detroit's awesome. Like people here, I think had like when we said we were moving to Detroit, we heard all types of stuff about
Yeah.
like
Yeah, right.
what to expect when you go from people who probably haven't ever been to Detroit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
guaranteed. Never been.
Yeah. And so it's like I don't think it's gonna be the Malice in the Palace all the time.
Yeah.
But Detroit's great. Like you can walk to all 4 major sports. It's
Wow.
Yeah.
You enjoy going to downtown, like
Oh,
for
anytime
for
we get a
meals,
babysitter,
anything?
we're heading downtown. Yeah.
Really? That's
Yeah.
awesome, man. That's really
Yeah.
cool.
So I have a question, like with families now or about to have a family. Again, KJ's getting into this age where I feel like I kind of have an influence on him a little bit.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Before, he's just kind of sitting there, maybe walking, doing around. But my question is, and this goes from, I can ask this so many different ways,
Right.
but like a household that like wants to raise their children like the right way.
Yep.
Because I know like I grew up and I mean, there wasn't a whole lot of reading your Bible at home either.
Right.
And so I'm just like, what should that look like?
Yep.
Like what can I be doing
Yeah.
as a dad to
So
make
he
sure
can see you doing it.
yeah, that
Right.
it's not just going to church, right?
Right.
It's not what it should be. I shouldn't be
Yep.
counting on the Sunday school teacher to, bring my son to Christ.
Yeah.
Like I want to be doing things at home that's like, man, there's something different about my dad.
Yep.
Like if he's going to other places or around other guys' dads or whatever, like,
Right.
and that's what I want to be, not this way or whatever. But like, what
Yep.
should that look like at home? You think where we've got kids that are like, obviously we're not at this point yet, but kids
Right.
that are like
Soon,
starting to
though,
make
soon.
decisions,
Yeah, I feel like it happens a lot quicker. Than
Yeah. Well, and it's like rhythms, right? So like it's never going to be easier to set up time to disciple your kids than right now.
Yeah.
And like if you wait to build time into your schedule later, it's going to be harder
Be
than if you
harder.
just even if they're not getting anything out of it.
Yeah.
Like, And this is something that
you create the culture now.
Right. And we've done this imperfectly. Like we've done it in fits and starts. There are seasons where we are like so consistent with family worship before bed.
Yeah.
And there's seasons where like, honestly, Ellie has taken the lead at times where it's like Davey has what Ellie called the Bible basket.
Yeah.
And she'll like tell Davey, go get your Bible basket. And it's got Carrie Chappell.
Yeah.
When we found out we're pregnant with Davey, gave us this basket, and it's the fruit of the Spirit. But they're like soft, like
little plush fruits or whatever.
Right, yeah. And each one's got like faithfulness, love, whatever written on it. And so Davey gets to pick one fruit to hold during our family worship. And then there's like a little thing that you read. So like, faithfulness is trusting God even when things are hard or something like that. And so she'll repeat that. And then we'll read a story out of our storybook Bible.
Yeah.
And I think just expectation setting, like that. A lot of times it looks more like us being like, Davey, sit down. Davey, sit down. Davey, come back over here. Like, don't take that away from Mercer's little. Mercer can't like. So sometimes it just looks like that, and it's like, well, we did it.
Yeah.
But
I think that's the thing, though. Is she comes to see and realize this is just part of our life.
Right.
Like we do this every night. You know.
Yeah. And I don't want it to sound like this is like we have like a 300-day hot streak going on or anything like that. Like it's imperfect.
Bro, but that's such a good question though.
Because
I'm sitting
nobody's perfect, bro.
I'm sitting here thinking to myself too, KB, like what does it look like to, like you said, family worship, right? And like, how do you go about that? I mean, do you read a devotion with your kids? At what age? Like how long's too long? Are they losing attention? Do you use a video?
And like is there ever a point where you're like doing too much? Do you know what I'm saying? Like where they're like overbearing. Where they're like, don't talk to me. I don't want, what I'm saying?
Right. Well, I think for like Davey at this point in her life, it's we're creating the memory of the fact that we did it.
Yeah, right.
Like that, I don't know how much is going to be like later on. She's going to be like, I remember when I was 2, my dad said this one night. And so it's not
the excitement for it too.
Yeah,
like the joy, and then like you're building family relationships in that moment too. Like doing something as a family.
Yep.
Because you get so busy, and it's like sometimes it's hard to have a meal together. You know what I mean? Because like, well, I was out late for something for this, or had a youth event, or Bree had to stay late and do charts, and you just so many different things happen.
And we build routines for our kids in every other way. Like a big one for us has been like when they're babies, like doing a bath right before bed, because then like when they hit the bathtub, they learn that like that is what happens next. But and then it's like, why wouldn't we do this with this?
Yeah.
With what really matters.
Was there ever a? This kind of goes back to your whole life, I think.
Yep.
So you're in college. You're not living for Christ.
Right.
Like you're just doing what your heart desired.
Yep.
And then you took a role at Hillsdale, and then it led to where you're at now. Was there ever a moment where you just, I don't know, man. Like we talked about sanctification a little bit.
Right.
Was there ever a moment where you realized like God has saved me? Like I'm kind of getting through this hard part of my life. Do you know what I'm saying? Maybe grief with your mom. Maybe just like doing the wrong things at school. Like, was there ever a day or a moment where you're like, all right, I've kind of like gotten through that?
Yeah, I think that like
that might be a hard question to answer. I think sanctification is one thing that you mentioned earlier. Maybe we were just talking off podcast, and it's like as a young boy, whenever I accepted Christ when I was 11, I didn't know what sanctification was.
Yeah,
and honestly, I probably didn't understand it until I was 25.
Right,
but I kind of like. At some point, it flipped a switch in my head where, like, each day walking with the Lord, He's going to, like, the Holy Spirit is going to continually sanctify us.
I think that, like, for things that were outward, right? And again, we need to make sure we're doing it for the right reason in our heart. But, like, some of those things that other people would see are easier. Like, for me, like, dropping the alcohol over time. And, like, getting that under control. That was the easier one for me, because it's like, okay, I am abusing this, and I need to stop.
Right.
And like, if I don't, people can see that, and it's harder to hide. Yeah. There are other issues like purity. Like that one's easy to hide if you want to. And that was one that like had a firm grip on me.
Yeah.
And so like for me, that happened more when I would open up to other people about it. So like I can think of when I was at Hillsdale, and honestly, like, probably not even knowing enough about ministry to realize how big it was that I was doing this. But like, Josh Barnes worked at Hillsdale at the same time as me. And so he was a couple years older than me in school and stuff. And I was just like, hey man, like, you ever like think that like pornography is wrong? And he was like, do I ever think that pornography is wrong? And I was like, yeah, like you ever think like maybe I shouldn't be doing this? And he was like, all right, let's unpack this.
It's funny, but no, like it's so normalized in society that like it's almost like kids growing up now think it's normal,
right?
Think it's fine,
right?
It's
and it was like awful. The Holy Spirit was obviously convicting me of that, even though nobody had sat me down and been like, "Hey, don't do this." I was starting to feel like, okay, this is something in my life that doesn't seem to line up with who I'm called to be. And was like reaching out for help and was just like didn't even know enough to know the seriousness of what I was saying to him. But then he would come back to me and be like, "Hey, how's this going?" And would be honest with me about different types of struggles and stuff. And so like that was, I think, a crucial point, like the first time I opened up to somebody about that.
Yeah.
And then like right when I moved to Durham, that was a huge time in my life because it was kind of like, I moved there thinking I was just going to hit seminary hot and heavy.
Yeah.
And then it was like, oh man, seminary is expensive. I need to work.
Yeah.
And like I was living at the time though with Joe and another friend of ours, Caleb McGee, and another guy, Austin Parsons, who we're friends with. We were living in this one house. There was only supposed to be 3 of us. So like if the landlord came by, we had to hide somebody. But that season of like, those guys were further along than me in their walks. And like seeing what it looked like hospitality.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. We would have people over and like welcome them in and like play games. And it was just like casual fun. Just learning how to like be in Christian community, I think, during that season and the beauty in that. And then honestly, another big turning point, and this is going to sound super lame, but like I started reading the Chronicles of Narnia.
Yeah. That's not lame,
bro.
bro.
I love C.S. Lewis, man.
It's your story, bro.
Yeah. And it was like for me, because I was also learning a lot about the sovereignty of God. So like on one hand, I was probably being like, fundamentalism all of a sudden looked really attractive to me because it was like, okay, I've been over here, so and that's not working. So like, let's go all
opposite.
Yeah,
the pendulum swing the other way.
But then I think C.S. Lewis was a little bit like holding the pendulum for me. It's like, nope, it's both. It's both.
Yeah.
Like, we were talking about this earlier, like being able to like be normal and fun, but also follow after Christ.
Yeah.
It's a good point of that, or what I got of it, is something that I'm learning more of too, is just talking it out. Like, you've got to tell people what you're struggling with because on your own, like you're not going to be able to get through it. And that's just been huge for me over the last, I don't know how long.
Just like 6-8 months. We've had some serious talks, man.
Yeah, there's been some stuff like recently of not I feel like it's not like personal struggles, but it's just struggling or questioning. Like
which is still a struggle, man. Like,
it's obviously still an internal struggle.
But
it's just like, man, like if you don't talk about it, you're just going to bottle it in. And what I do is I just shut down. Like the first time I really like felt emotions in my life was like when Pastor Josh left the church. And I was like, what do I do with this? I got to talk about it. You know, and like it wasn't until all that just got out that I was like, all right, like God's still in control. Like things are going to be working out. Like our church was still strong like through all that. And so, I mean, it's just, I don't know. That's what I got out of that is, man, we got to talk about it.
It's, the pastor at the summit, he always used, and I think he was quoting somebody else, but he said, secret gardens always grow mutant. So like when you have secret gardens, they're never going to bear good fruit. They're always going to grow in ways that we don't want them to.
That's good.
Yeah.
I want to talk about like kind of you and Joe's relationship because so he was persistent with you. To the point where it was almost like you were annoyed with what he was saying.
Right.
And I know of one of my friends specifically. I won't say his name. If he ever he probably doesn't watch this, but if he does, he'll know. I know he gets annoyed. When I talk to him about my faith, asking about his faith, I know he gets annoyed because he changed the subject. And I keep doing it.
Deflect all the time.
And honestly, I feel like he might not hang out with me as much now as he used to because of that. Man, I spoke at that fundraiser 2 nights ago, and I wanted to make sure that I told them. I asked Jerry, who asked me to speak. I asked him if he wanted me to talk to me about my faith or my baseball story. And he said both. And as I was working out, I was like, that was the stupidest question. Because like I should never have to ask somebody if I can talk about my faith.
Right.
And because that's the most important thing. But I guess where like as far as discipleship, and this is everybody's question. This isn't just for you. This like where do you, with a friend, man, that you want to show love and you want to show that you care about, make sure that you're not like in their face. And it's like a loving way of like being persistent,
Yep.
but also not being judgmental and not being, I don't know the question. Does that make sense though?
Yeah.
It's a balance, man, between
Right.
being overly harsh and critical and condescending versus loving and inviting and caring. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know that
There's
answer.
a couple.
Yeah, well-
and there's a couple people in my life that I
Right.
know don't hang out with me as much now because I talk to them about it.
Yeah.
Right.
And I'm not going to shy away from that, but also I want them to know that I love them. You know,
and
like
this is something that Joe has naturally, and so I think it's one of those like this is how he's
trait.
built,
Yeah,
but
Just-
God has used it, and so but it's something that can be learned, like being a good question asker.
yeah.
Joe is like super inquisitive, and he genuinely wants to know the answers to the question he's asking.
Yeah.
So I think like when you ask people questions instead of coming at them with like a spiel that you've prepared,
Right.
that comes off a lot better. And you can ask questions in a way that are
can
going
ask leading questions.
Like what are you like?
Yeah.
What's up right now? Like what are you going through? Like
yeah,
I know. What you're saying.
like for Joe, I remember him being like, "Hey man, so like, you know, we've grown up in the church for a long time. Like, how do you reconcile like saying you're a believer and a follower of Jesus, and then like, you know, we've been partying on the weekends. Like, how do you?" And I didn't have an answer for that. It was just kind of like I compartmentalize it was the real answer. But so I think having like asking them questions and then just keeping in mind, we keep going back to this, but like sovereignty of God, like salvation belongs to the Lord. So like I can't, there's a place and a time for apologetics. Don't get me wrong. Like we need to know why we believe what we believe, but I'm never going to win somebody by arguing them.
No,
like
it's not an argument.
I'm never going to
100%.
win. I'm never like
it's never through you. It's through Jesus.
And I understand like the phraseology of like being a soul winner, like somebody that's constantly putting the gospel in front of people. But like the Holy Spirit is the only person that's ever won a soul.
Right.
It's not your job to convince somebody of the gospel.
Right. But he uses words.
Yeah.
Right.
So, like,
I just for me, man, like especially the past year, honestly, since we started the podcast, like when we do Bible studies, when we like are talking, I want to be talking about like the Bible, about Jesus specifically, man. I want to be talking.
These are the words that
and
have
so
power.
people that don't. What was the guy FCA? His verse was it was like.
Brian Burgess at the
but
Fields of
he
Faith.
said the power or the power of the gospel is. I got to find that verse. Remember that verse he kept saying?
I can't remember.
The gospel is power for those being saved, but not for those that are perishing. I don't know.
Sure.
Yeah.
We can take a quick intermission. You want to find it?
It was in Mark. I think.
I can find it right now.
I'll find it after I make this
in
comment.
one of the Gospels.
But I say that because, man, if Kurt came up to me and all we did was read and he didn't ask me a single question, I would get a lot from it. But if I go up to my friend who doesn't believe and I'm like, "Hey, bro, you need to believe where it says in Romans that you're a sinner," like he doesn't get the same thing as me,
Right.
And so that's where you're right about asking questions,
Right. And sometimes not even asking a question that you're like, they need to know the answer. Like if you're reading something in scripture and be like, "Hey man, I've been reading this and I've been like struggling with it. What do you think about this?"
Yeah.
And they're like knowing they're not going to give you a biblical answer for that, but it might start a conversation. And then it kind of drops their defenses of like, okay, so Jeremy doesn't know everything that he believes yet.
bro.
And he's still building his theology. Yeah.
Not joking. I knew it was in 1 Corinthians, but it's right here.
What is it?
1 Corinthians 1:18, it says, "For the word of the cross is foolishness to those who are perishing, but to us who are being saved it is the power of God."
Yeah.
So it's like my buddy or people that are lost might read the gospel and just think it's foolish.
Yeah.
Right.
Because they're perishing.
Well,
But for
from
us,
a worldly
man-
perspective, it is foolish.
Right.
Why
Right.
would you give up your life for some creator God that I can't see right here?
Why would you say you're worth nothing? Like,
Yeah.
Beatitudes, right? We just walked through the Beatitudes.
I think so much of it comes down to knowing who you're talking to.
Yeah.
Like if you're talking to someone who you know is a believer and maybe is living a lifestyle that doesn't align with that, I think you should maybe err on the side of a little more like this is truth and like not like almost accountability and a little confrontational in the sense of
if
like
you know that the Bible has authority in their life.
right. Yeah. Point them to
Exactly.
scripture in that context. Like this is what God's word says. I'm not coming at you. Let's just look what God's word says.
Yep.
But if you have someone who is just a non-believer, never been to church, I think you just can
a different
show
way to
them truth of
approach
who
it.
God is, who is Jesus, right?
And that's where my mindset is kind of shifting about like, I feel like when I was growing up, mission minded, it's like, if I can tell the gospel to 100 people, it's better than me having a one-on-one conversation with one person and just, but I'm totally flipped now. Maybe not totally, but right now, man, I feel like it's so much more beneficial for us to spend time with a single person, discipling them, pouring into them over and over and over and over again, and teaching them to do the same thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Than it is to just say one thing to 100 people.
Yep.
Because like you said, you have to know the person and you have to pour. And I think that's a part of what your ministry, like what you do at church, right?
Right.
For your job. Like that is teaching parents and throughout with their kids and everything, that it's not what I'm saying. It's what you were saying to them.
Yep.
It's not about what you say, or people don't remember what you say. They remember how you make them feel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's a thing that I've been trying to have a mindset on too, just with when I'm talking with people, because I know I don't have a good way with words. Like I want you to like, I still struggle with this, but I want you to know that I love you.
Right.
Know? And so it's just a thing that I've been working on, coming up kind of with what you were saying. But
has there been any like struggles with your ministry? No, I asked you that because like
I think there's always struggles,
because like it's real.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? This is your life.
Right.
And so like with all the good things that come, I also think it's learning points and like things that you have to like learn through. I don't know if you even want to share about that, but
I think I can just kind of do like 30,000 feet. I mean, I think it's easy when you are a church member. It's easy let me start with this. It's easy as a pastor to underestimate what church members are going through.
Right.
So like when I was at Hillsdale, right out of college, right into ministry, I'm like all the time like, man, why don't we have more volunteers?
Yeah.
Like I was like so frustrated about like we've got like 3 people that want to serve our students, and like, do they not understand the importance? And so like volunteerism was frustrating.
Right.
But then that season where I was working at the car dealership and was like trying to get engaged
and
to
school.
LA, and I was doing school and I was having to show up Sunday mornings.
I'm swamped.
And I was just like, man, the weeks go so fast.
You saw the opposite side.
Yes. And I was like, okay, so when people like, I am going to appreciate volunteers. And so I think there's that side of it where like it's easy for church staff to underestimate like how much of a sacrifice it is for members to be involved in the church. Like it's what we're supposed to do. It's not a like let you off the hook thing.
Right.
But
it's about like
we need to be appreciative of that.
Yeah,
bro, it takes a lot to volunteer to look after 10 8-year-olds.
Yeah.
Especially when they ain't yours.
Right.
Yeah.
And they don't want to listen to you.
Right. Yeah.
And
they know
you can't do nothing.
Yes. Yeah, there's no consequences.
No.
Which is so
You're not my dad.
Right. I was subbing with Julie Suggs at her church. She works at a church and they have like a preschool.
Yeah.
And they put me with 3-year-olds.
Yep.
And there was one kid that just wanted to scream.
Like
middle of the talk. He would come back and like if this was like a deck of cards, just like flip it off. Like, just all this stuff. And the teacher wasn't there, but the sub was there.
Right.
So the sub was heading up. I was just like not the sub, the assistant.
Yep.
So the head teacher wasn't there. The assistant was there. So she was in the head. So I was just helping her.
Right.
She was like, okay, I need you to kind of like reprimand him and like kind of get on him when he's getting mad. I'm like, lady, I don't know how to do this with a 3-year-old.
Right.
So like he's starting to scream. I just pick him up. Hey man, please don't do that. Pick him back down, put him back.
Same thing.
Does it again.
Yeah.
Please don't do that again, man.
Yeah.
2 minutes later, I'm like, what did we just talk about?
He knows he's untouchable.
Like I'm awful at that.
Yeah.
Reprimanding anything, but you're so right, bro. They think there's no consequence.
They know. But
there isn't.
Again, man, like really appreciating volunteers.
Yeah.
And that's one thing don't let me cut you off, but like thinking about like in our youth program and like how do you show appreciation? Like obviously more than like, oh, thank you so much. Because like at some point, like you really, and this is like practical advice I'm asking for, you know, because I have a lot of very faithful, just genuine people volunteering with youth program.
KB.
And if
KB's a big
bro,
one.
you know that firsthand. If that doesn't happen, that takes away from my ability to spend time with kids because it's a lot to prepare food, to watch who's here, to provide, you know, like it's hard to pour into the lives of 40 kids. Right on a 1-on-3 level, you know. But
I think the 2 things that come to mind are like clarity is kindness. So if we're like unclear about what expectations are for you serving in this ministry, if I'm unclear about like what, like I'm getting you on Saturday night where you're supposed to be teaching Sunday morning.
Right.
Like if I'm not respecting their time and their energy, and if I am like all over the place. I think that speaks volumes to how much or how little I appreciate them.
Yeah.
So like our elementary team, we did like a training on Sunday morning, which our elementary associate Jackie led, and she does a great job. And she like had laid out like outlines of lessons, like clear ways to present the gospel, and then she had like a PowerPoint of like how to make the most of your small group time with your K through 5 or 5th grade.
Yeah.
And like walked through that and had like books that she recommended for them to read. And like in general, I think like this is bigger than clarity is kindness, but like people calling them to more is better than like setting like you think like they've got so much going on, like let's just make it easy for them. But like sometimes calling them up into more is how you get the most out of your volunteers and how they feel like you trust them. And you like,
I think it communicates value to them, like saying this is your responsibility, like this is what I want you to do, this is what you can do in this role, not just saying oh yeah, just make sure they don't like bite anybody, you know, like make sure they just don't get in trouble.
Well, like if I come to you and I'm like, hey Jacob, I need somebody to watch the 3-year-olds, you're like, okay, like I should do that,
I'll come babysit, sure.
But if I'm like, hey, I really admire the way that you walk with the Lord, and I think you could have a big impact with these 3-year-olds, then that all of a sudden is like, oh man, I'm doing something. So I think clarity is kindness. And then the other one is like just intentional relationships with them outside of what you're asking them to do. Every time you're with them, it's to do ministry or to tell them about the next time you're doing ministry.
Right.
Then that just feels like you're getting like they'll feel used after a while.
That's what you're communicating.
Right.
You know, you only talk to them in the capacity of this task or this event or this job.
So like on the flip side of kids ministry, for our student ministry team, on Saturday night, our student associate, she offered her house. And so all of our student ministry volunteers went there, and she had made pasta, and then like the high school volunteers brought drinks, the middle schoolers brought dessert. And so we ate together. We played like Family Feud, which was fun.
Awesome. We do that at youth.
Quick tip: do not play categories.
Okay.
Just avoid it at all costs because
I
thought it was pretty good.
It is very ambiguous, and you don't want to be the one saying that counts or that don't count. Right? People get mad.
Well, people were mad about Family Feud because one of the questions was like name an NFL team.
Yeah.
And there's 32 of them.
Yeah.
And it's only the top 7.
Yeah.
And it's like not the
Dallas Cowboys had to be number 1.
They weren't on it.
Are you joking? What?
Number 1 was the New England Patriots.
Okay, that makes sense.
I can see that.
Yeah, so like they were like, it's a random smattering of 100 people. So like the Jaguars were on there because they've got a huge European presence.
Oh my.
Anyways, so
this
like
European presence.
they do. They go there like Shaka Khan's got there twice a year.
Yeah.
So like they just being in like a environment where we're not like, hey, we're going on retreat this day, make sure you save up PTO to do this or that. Like, we're not downloading information. We're just eating, we're playing a game. And then we just talked about the importance of our words and like how they are amplified in the lives of students. So it's not an information, it's a
reflection.
Like, how can we do this well? Yeah.
Cool. I have one more question, and then probably another one.
Time out. What were we on right before I asked that? About the practical advice on showing appreciation?
Yeah, to like
volunteers. You were just talking
we were talking about something else. I think you had asked something. I don't know.
We're talking about discipleship and like with specific friends. So we have a bunch of parents, not a bunch. I know my mom watches.
Yeah.
I say that every one, every pod. We might have some like parents with younger kids and like.
Also, we talked about my mom for a while.
Yeah.
Miss Lori had a huge impact on not just me, but like my whole family and my siblings, and so did Mr. Joel.
Yeah.
Man, Miss Lori. And it's like kept up with us. Like she'll text me sometimes and like. It was so great to see her tonight, and we're up in Michigan. I'll text her when we go through Midland and be like, "Hey, we're in Midland.
We're in your hometown."
Yeah.
She loves you, bro. She loves your whole family. So does my dad. Is there any like not quick advice? I know like your ministry, you're pouring into these parents, right? And you're pouring into these kids, but is there any like quick advice you could give our parents? Yeah, just like. You said earlier that the hour in Sunday school is not what's going to bring them to Christ, and it might, but it's much more important for them to be pouring into their lives away from it. And that's something that I hope whenever I have kids and whenever y'all's kids get older, like that resonates with us. But is there anything you can say to the parents that like might be watching and just emphasizing that?
Yeah, I think the truth oftentimes is in the middle. So like if your first instinct as a parent is like, it doesn't matter that much.
Right.
It probably matters more than you realize. Mm-hmm. And if your first instinct is like, the house is on fire, my kid just said this and I can't believe it, and what am I going to do? Then you probably just need to like take a deep breath and like the truth is probably somewhere in the middle. So like realizing like things that seem like a big deal. You've got 18 years. So like we're going to work through this as a family. And then and that's not to minimize, there are big deals that happen in parenting.
Yeah.
And then things that sometimes feel like, oh, it's not a big deal if we miss family worship tonight, which I'm guilty of. Like over time, that's a big deal. Yeah. And that makes a big difference. So I would say that comes to mind.
Yeah, it's good. It's good.
The other thing that's in scripture is like, parents are primary disciplers, right? So you've been like, God knit your child together in their mother's womb and then gave them to you.
You know what verse that is? Not trying to put you on the spot.
Psalm.
And it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Yeah. I just want to look it up.
Yeah,
we do that. We do this every podcast.
Right. Well, and then I'll give you another one. Psalm 127.
Okay.
So like, children are a heritage from the Lord; they're a blessing, a reward.
Yeah.
They're like arrows in the quiver of a mighty warrior.
Oh, I've heard that.
So like, you've got 18 years, and then at the end of 18 years, your job is to shoot those arrows out. Like, arrows aren't meant to stay in the quiver. Mm-hmm. So how are you going to like steward those 18 years? So that when you shoot that arrow out, it goes out and it goes out on mission for God.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just reading it. It says, "Behold, children are a gift of the Lord. The fruit of the womb is a reward. Like arrows in the hand of a warrior, so are the children of one's youth. How blessed is the man whose quiver is full of them. They will not be ashamed when they speak with their enemies in the gate." Like, that's cool, man.
Yeah. So I think just remembering like that you've been given them, they're not yours.
Yeah.
They're God's, and that you're going to have to let go of them.
Got to steward it.
Right. Yeah. So like, maybe they get sent to, they come right back to Davie County and do ministry at the church that they grew up at.
Yeah.
Or maybe they're in Europe.
Maybe they get sent up to Michigan and, wear up north sweatshirts and crazy stuff like that. But
Slovenia.
Yeah. Like,
I want to talk more about the family worship thing. Like, seriously, like, what does it look like in the Slabach household? Like, Davey, go get your fruit for the night. Like, what's the typical? Because seriously, man, I think it's right. Yeah,
it's not long. So like, the Bible basket has the fruit in it.
Yep.
And so she gets that. We hand it to her. She holds it. We read the little thing, and then we just have a storybook Bible.
Yeah.
And so we read one story out of it, and usually it has a question or something at the end.
Yeah.
We try to get her to know what the answer.
Does that storybook Bible, is it just like a compilation of stories, or is it literally like
it's
the entire
stories.
Bible?
Not the entire Bible.
Okay, but just specific stories.
It's 52 stories, so it's like designed to get you through a year.
Oh, okay.
That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah, so it's really great, and I am forgetting the name of it. It's something storybook Bible.
Yeah. No, that's awesome, man. And I think it's so cool what you said about starting that sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
To where it becomes normal. It's a routine, and our kids hopefully just grow accustomed to expecting that. You know?
Right. Yeah. So that's the bulk of it. We like to, sometimes we'll turn on YouTube and like sing a couple of like Slugs and Bugs is that's a like Christian kids group. Or I don't know. There's several songs like that.
What'll be cool though, because I can attest to this when I was at y'all's house, is like when friends start coming over.
Yep.
Right. And you're doing these things. Right. It's like, this is what we do.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Because I remember like, not many days, but when I was in probably elementary school and I would stay at y'all's house, we prayed at the window, at the door before we went on the bus. Do y'all remember that?
I don't.
Mom would pray for us.
Well, yeah, I do.
The front door, the glass door at the old house.
Door, yeah, we'd hold hands.
I mean, it didn't happen every time, but when it didn't, I was like,
Right. Wait, can we leave yet?
Like, we didn't pray, guys. Like, I think that's a cool aspect of looking at that too, and just the impact that you can have on other kids too.
Absolutely.
And then they go back and tell their parents of like, well, why don't we pray before we eat? Or little things like that. Of just, again, let's do it every single day and make it a part of what we do. Just thanking the Lord for all that we have.
Absolutely. So. And just to close the loop on that, like, parents are primary discipler, but nowhere does it say they're the only discipler.
Right. Yeah.
So like, if you're a parent, like the other way to err would be to like lock it down,
not let anybody else do anything.
Like,
right.
I'm gonna tell my kids what they need to
That's
believe.
the extreme.
Right. Yeah. And so like, I can't remember if it was Barna. It's one of those like Christian research groups. Maybe it was Orange, but they did a study of kids who grew up in the church and stayed in the church after college, which Again, the goal is not like just staying in the church, like it's the heart, but that's an indicator.
No, yeah.
So the largest common denominator in those kids is that on average, they had 5 adults who were not their parents who had what they termed significant spiritual influence. So like if I'm like looking back on my life, like Miss Lori is somebody that I'm going to name. Coach Biter is somebody I'm going to name. At Carrie Chapel, like I'm not going to be able to name everybody, but like there's people
you can point back
right
to and
my
you
head.
know that they were they had the Lord with them and they were
they would speak into my life, and my parents would have like told me listen to them.
Right. And there's just something special about once you have that person pour into you, you know that they're going to continue. Like I knew I could go to Ron Cox because he poured into me when I was 11.
Right.
And I know now I can still go to Ron Cox.
Yep.
It's just something special about the bond you make when these kids are young, like in the youth, that like 15 years from now, they're going to know that you're there still, like for us dealing with these youth kids. And that's like same thing with parenting, I feel like.
Yeah. Everything's amplified when they're kids. I mean, like the things that we think are little and like, oh, that was just something I did off the cuff.
Right.
Like they're going to remember that.
Yeah.
I think one thing's had a profound effect on me, and just knowing someone's heart is like their willingness to pray with you. Yeah. And I don't know, man, since Pastor Michael has been here, there has been a huge focus in our church on like prayer and just how important it is, how we want to be a church of prayer. Mm-hmm. And like just thinking about when you pray with someone, whether like one-on-one or one-on-two or whatever, right, in a small group setting, and you really see someone's desire to pray with you. Like, man, I don't know. There's something just supernatural in that moment to where there are relationships and bonds built through that when someone opens up their heart, not to sit here and like have some eloquent speech, right? But just to be authentic and genuine.
It's just being real.
Yeah, just pour your heart out with somebody like, man, this guy really cares about me. Or this teacher, my 3rd grade, Sunday school teacher, she really cares about me, right?
And it's like, do you still have Psalm 126?
Yeah, bro.
Yeah. So what's the beginning of it say?
Unless the Lord builds the house, right? They labor in vain who build it. Unless the Lord guards the city, the watchman keeps awake in vain. Yeah.
So when you're like willing to pray with somebody, like prayer is weakness. It's like you're going to somebody for help because you can't do it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so I think that the more vulnerable you are with people, it indicates humility.
Yeah, right.
When you're willing to pray and like when prayer is your first response.
Yeah.
And it's like that. It's that I can do all of this. I could give you wisdom off the cuff, or I could like talk to you about this. But unless the Lord builds the house, those who labor in vain.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Wow.
That's awesome, bro.
Yeah.
Do you have any other questions, bro? I feel like we've like
second recording tomorrow night, 6:30.
I feel like we're still best friends and we haven't talked in 10 years.
Yeah.
Literally. I mean, we've texted back and forth, but
I mean, it goes back to what we've been saying, right? Like the impact of your middle school, high school years.
Yeah.
Like we were together in some of the most formative years. And so now, 3 of us in our 30s, right?
Yeah.
I don't think they all have kids.
It's no coincidence that this happens as seamlessly as it does. You know, like there are years that went into like the relationships we have.
Yep.
It's crazy too. Bro. You knew like when we were being knit in our womb,
right?
Like in our mother's wombs, that this was going to be.
Yeah.
We're going to be in this room at this time.
Right. It's surreal to think about.
Sketch,
Right.
It is.
Crazy.
But there's a plan and a purpose for this, right? Like if you look at the big story of all of our lives, however long those are, like there was a time where we haven't seen each other much for the last 8 or 10 years. And then like through you being called to ministry, we reconnected like 2 months ago.
Yeah.
And now here we are.
We get to do this.
And so like in the story of our friendship, even like what's the point of us reconnecting right now? Like we don't know
maybe there's one person that needs to hear this, you know, who knows?
Right.
That's awesome, bro.
But
dude, we're so thankful.
Yeah.
Seriously.
I'm thankful for y'all.
I was just
what a blessing, man.
No, seriously. I'm so thankful that you were in our lives when we were growing up, that your family was in our lives when we were growing up.
Yeah.
Just coming through town like this time, like
so thankful, bro. Yeah. And it's Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
I'm ready for some turkey.
Wait, real quick. What's y'all's favorite
Pause the exit music.
Wait, what's y'all's favorite Thanksgiving meal? Just real
sweet
quick.
Potato casserole. Done.
Wait, do you have your phone?
No.
We did this last night about favorite Thanksgiving food. I was gonna say we could do a round of Family Feud real quick, but it's all right, bro. It's all right.
It's sweet potato casserole. I don't care what you say.
So I don't like sweet potatoes.
Oh, great heaven.
Really?
No, but Heath does. So Heath
Detroit's messed you up, man.
Dude, so
They're Southern in your
Heath, 1 year growing up, so like our grandparents are the absolute best, and we figured out over the years, like they would listen at Thanksgiving for like what to get us at Christmas. So like whatever you talked about at Thanksgiving,
Oh, they're paying attention.
And
Like
so,
your mom's parents,
My
or
dad's parents,
Your dad's
Man,
parents?
I love Corvettes.
yeah, well, no, but I did 1 year. I went on and on about their Keurig machine.
Yeah.
and I got a Keurig.
Really? That's
Yeah.
cool. That's awesome.
And it was maybe intentional, but then Heath 1 year went on and on about the sweet potatoes, and he got a can of yams for Christmas.
What did he do?
He got some other stuff too, but when he opened it up,
That's
it was
funny.
like sweet potatoes.
I got yams.
This just proved our
He's gonna be like-
hypothesis.
Right? Yeah. You know, it's like Usain Bolt. Like when they asked him why he's so fast, and he said it's the yams.
The alms.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Nah, but really, we're thankful.
Yeah.
for you
I'm
coming
super
on.
thankful
Yeah.
for y'all. Yeah.
It's been awesome.
Yep.
We're thankful for you guys.
Yes, I love you.
Can I do the outro music now?
Yeah, bro. You can always do the outro music. Just don't
Well,
do,
could've
just
kept
don't do the
playing.
crickets.
You made me stop it earlier.
Well, I want to talk a little
Hey,
more.
can I tell the same joke I told last week to Caroline?
Not on air.
Yeah, sure. Close it.
Well, I mean, we can cut it anytime. So, bye.
Bye.